Hey everyone, so thanks for tuning in. This is the part 2 of refinishing and correcting a USA SG61. As you've seen maybe in part 1 video, check that out if you haven't had a chance. Basically it talks about what we're going to be doing with this SG faded 61 and then what it's going to end up looking like in the end. We're going to be going from this, as you see here in the this photo on the left. You'll see the SG61 that Rich has commissioned me to refinish and rebevel. And on the right, you see my 1961 Les Paul SG that we're going to be kind of mimicking to a degree. So I've refinished his 1962 custom. Actually, I think it might have been a 63 custom 2 years ago or so. And he was really happy with the result. I thought it came out great. And he got this SG faded recently to gig because he doesn't really feel comfortable taking the vintage guitars as they get more valuable these days. He doesn't feel as comfortable taking the vintage guitars out on gigs. And he does gig a lot. So I think he teaches, and also he does play out quite a bit, so he didn't want to risk those guitars anymore. And the SG being one of his favorites, he wanted to get something modern that he can take and not really worry too much about. But at the same time, he wanted to have it look like how he's kind of in the same mind as me and a few other people who really are sticklers about how the SG looks. It's quite a shame that Gibson goes to insane details on most of the guitars, especially the Les Paul, to get the details correct. I mean, period correct details, and they do a good job on the SG2, but they're still missing a little bit of the things. Until most recently, I used to bug Matt Kaler about it a little bit, and then there finally has been a correction in the custom shop line where there have been few actually. Let me just back up. There have been, even in the U.S. line, there have been small, like, quiet upgrades that have been happening ever since the new management has happened. And one of the things is the horn shapes. If you look at the SG61 horn shape is pretty much exactly like the horn shape of an original 61 Les Paul now. But it used to be very pointed. So you would have a cut. The cut would have been more exaggerated and pointy on the bass horn, and it made the bevels not quite as vintage looking as they should have been. That slowly changed. In fact, I noticed that change when the Tony Iommi came out. They made that change, I think, partly to facilitate putting that strap button up there on the horn. They needed more meat to do that, but also it gave them an opportunity to correct that shape a bit. So that shape was corrected, and the other major thing was putting the crown or thistle inlay on the headstock. Let me see if I can find that picture real quick. It used to be lower. It used to be lower. Around 66, they lowered them. 66, 67, the thistle inlay lowered, more centered on the headstock. I think that was the aesthetic that they were going for, is that more centered on the entire headstock. And it stayed that way for most, except for the custom shop stuff, up until really recently, 2021, 22. The fadeds are the first ones that I noticed that started having that change where the inlay had moved up to the correct spot. For instance, this is a 1961 Les Paul. So this is how they originally started looking. So that is a positive step. But let me go back to the main picture here. That and some of the other little details that they've been doing are really good moves. The custom shop has taken it a little bit further. Up until real recently, they have been having really fat horns, and that there's a new cut that they've added the correct taper on the bass horns, and the bevels are looking so much better than they ever have before. The only thing is, on the custom shops, they're still missing. Let me show you here. So the 61 USA has it right here. There's this scoop here, and there's this scoop here. It's still not quite as deep right here. It should be, most of them, they're all a little bit different, the vintage ones, but most of them had a little bit longer taper area here. But they do have this scoop right here that kind of blends into that. But the newest custom shops with the taper corrected don't have that little relief cut, and it's kind of just flat going. So it's kind of odd. It's kind of hard without an example here to show you. It's kind of hard to picture, but that's just one more thing that the custom shop isn't doing. But it's on the back of the guitar. It's nitpicky, I know, but you're here for the nitpicky stuff. If you're watching this, you kind of are interested at least in the nitpicky details. So I did cover some of that in the part 1, but we're going to go over this in detail on what we did to, or what I did to Rich's guitar to get closer to that. So knowing that it was going to be refinished, we talked about colors early on, and we ended up going with TV white. So I bought a piece of Honduran mahogany to test things on. Now, I did some research and pretty much figured out basically what you have to do to get it right. So you basically prep your surface, and this is not prepped. I just did it. I mean, lightly sanded it, but you prep your surface, you paint it white. This is Polaris white from Oxford, and this is with no pore fill. And then I pore filled. We tried. This is actually 2 different pore fills. So this is natural pore fill and a dark walnut from them. Let me see if I can get some pictures. And then a dark walnut with some clear on it. And you can see I didn't take much time because this is a test piece, but there's some bubbles there from humidity and going thick. But these are some of the test pieces on that Honduran mahogany. You can clearly see the demarcation where there's no pore fill on this side and there's pore fill on this side, just to kind of show the example of how it works. And what's interesting is you see some areas where this grain is not super apparent. It just starts to turn really white. Now I did look, and this is just showing what this Polaris white looks like next to like a very stark white, which is my car, which is dirty. But that was the main thing. These are showing next to other whites what it was look like. I was just giving him an example of what that looks like. But the grain showing up here, some areas are very grainy and some areas are just not. And it's a very even coat of white, so it just really depends on the wood and how it's cut for the grain to pop up. And some of that could be, some of the white could show up depending on what pore fill was already there, kind of things like that. So that's where we started. And when he sent me the guitar, I did these comparison photos, and I want to point some of this stuff out. Mainly the cuts that we were going to be doing. I used my Les Paul as a guide. It's kind of hard to, let's see up close. You can kind of see the difference here. What that general shape is the same, but if you can look at how different the cut is, it's quite noticeable when you start to look at it. The other one is the treble horn is not deep enough. It should come farther down. Granted, the USA pick guard is a little bit different shape. The other things you'll notice that can't be fixed are they cut away too much here and too much here. But like I said, all the original vintage ones are slightly different. So, but you can kind of get an idea there of what the differences are. But we can work with it to make it look much better. These are just some reference pics of how things look in comparison. Pretty cool. Now there is a difference in how this is constructed. The neck is not as inset on the originals and the custom shops. There is a good, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch height. The binding is set up another 1/8 of an inch higher at the neck joint than it is on the USA. Let me see do I have a better picture of that. The USA is basically just flush. The binding comes flush to the body, whereas the custom shop and the original vintages ones are set up higher. So that's quite a difference, and that changes the neck set, changes how the bridge and the pickup heights are. And you'll notice that the pickup rings on the vintage and custom shops are much taller than the USA. They are very small and short. They have to be. I mean, you can put tall ones on there, but it comes very close to the strings. My 62 ebony block replica is a USA model, and it has the tall rings. And I don't have any problem with clearance, but it's definitely close. Here's another shot of the two horns. You can see how that cut is just deep. It's about as deep here, but it also angles in this way on the vintage one. And a lot of them, most of them are like that. And most of them are much sharper. The customs are sharper still, some of them, and some of them are not. It's like the earlier they were, the sharper and more pronounced the bevel was. Then as the later they went, the less and less it got. It was as pronounced. So here's the headstock again. We looked at that. The original 61 Les Paul is wider. I know these aren't exactly lined up, but you can kind of get the idea. It's wider, especially here towards the wrist. This flare is wider. And maybe this picture shows a little bit better. And the bushing style of tuners, of course, is quite different. The nut is set differently. The vintage is a little bit closer to the outside edges. The strings, they come a little bit closer to the outside edges. And the truss rod cover, of course, is completely different. The logo is different. The older version is so much more janky. It looks actually kind of like a Gibson, like someone didn't do a good job, right? Where you can see it was hand done, hand masked and everything. But they're all the vintage ones are like that. So this is another decent shot straight on of the shapes. Someone might catch the bridges are set differently. This is just how this one was, and I've seen many of them like that, where the screws are pointed towards the tremolo. It probably would benefit to swap it because you get a little bit less meat here, and these intonations, this guitar is intonated, but just barely. There's no more room for it to get any more intonated. If I flip that bridge and put the saddles all in the correct spots, then I would have a little bit more room to get that intonated better. But for now, it's intonated spot on, and there's no more room to go. And it plays and stays in tune, so I'm happy with that. What else can we talk about? The differences, the knobs, of course, these are cheaper. They don't have the cool super mirror reflectives. They're just different. His came with it already missing. I don't know if I have a good shot of the binding of before I modified it, but this also shows the bevels and how the contours and everything looks. Here's the back again. The heel is completely different, and that's fine. Actually, the original early 60, the late 60 and early 61s have this step, but it's more of a rectangle like this than it is like this. I'm gonna let me see if I can find a picture of that real quick. I won't subject you to that. All right, so here's an example of a very early or late 60 version. This is as again, you can see these bevels are mega deep. Again, here you can see these bevels are super deep. And then this is what a late 60 heel looks like. It pretty much looks like a 65. It's got this ledge where it just goes right across, and it's got a little rectangular heel there, the inset. Now this is just before they moved to the smooth heel, which we're all more familiar with. So here's another early one, 61 with but 65 looks just the same, almost the same. So it's anyway, and once you have that, you go to actually, let me find this 62. This is what a 62 looks like. You have the same step as a 63, a little bit longer shelf, but you have a long, more oval shaped flat there. So that was on the ebony blocks only. because 61 through 63 you had the sideways tremolo, but in 62 you also had the short ebony block vibrola, and the short ebony block vibrolas almost all have this heel shape here, where all of the sideways tremolos that I've ever seen from 62 and 63 have the smooth heel, the taper heel, like mine. So we're going back to this. The whole point of showing you those was the fact that this is sort of closer to the original 61 heel, or late 60, early 61. It's just more of a round instead of rectangle. So it's kind of an amalgamation of different things, but I don't have any problem with that heel design. I think it's fine. It's cool. It looks good. Feels good. It's unobtrusive to play. So that's pretty much where we are. But the smooth heel is my favorite of all of them. Just because it's just so well done. It's just nice feeling and looking. It's pretty cool. There's no other. All the rest of them look like, you know, a inset neck set, you know, a set neck guitar, where this looks like it's kind of one piece, sort of. Pretty neat. But anyway, back to this guitar. Here's another shot of that smooth heel versus the step of the 61, which is fine, not a problem. Anyway, this is just a shot of the electronics. I was documenting everything as we go. It comes with orange drop capacitors, CTS pots, supposedly audio taper pots. Now this was interesting. When I was taking it apart, the ground wire was not under the plate. It was literally just kind of sitting there. In fact, this is a video of me taking it off. It just wasn't. It was just touching barely. It wasn't sandwiched under at all. So it's a miracle that it was grounding. So that's kind of funny. Here it is, all stripped. Oh, this might be a good shot. Let me see if I can. See if I can. Well, anyway, I can't zoom in, but you can see how pronounced a sharp ledge the binding is. Look at the binding at the fretboard. It's a very 90-degree angle up and down. They didn't roll that at all. It's wasn't. I wouldn't say it was comfortable or wasn't uncomfortable. I just didn't like it. I'm used to playing the vintage guitars or the custom shops, and this just doesn't feel that good. It didn't. I went ahead and rolled it, made it look like my vintage one. These are some Mojoaxe covers for the Lead 61 and Rhythm 61. These are wax potted, by the way. I went ahead and soldered those on. So here it is, me stripping the guitar. Now, I talked about this on my Instagram. Basically, I used acetone on nitrocellulose finishes. Acetone on a shop rag and just wipe it off. This faded nitro is super thin. It comes off super easy. You don't want it running all over the place, and you definitely want to be careful near the binding and the fretboard. But this way, when you strip it, you're not changing the geometry of anything. You're literally just wiping away the finish. This only works on nitrocellulose, but you just wipe it away. It literally just wipes away, and then you have.
I thought I'd show how quickly and easily this stuff is coming up.
So yeah, there's gonna be a video of me doing the same thing. So here's just shows it how easily it wipes away with some acetone. It was hard to do that with one hand, but it's super simple. And that's your end product is you have a bare wood with no geometry change. The downside is that you might leave a little bit of pore fill in the grain. I did my best to get it out as much as possible to get a clean shot. But here's while I'm doing the rolling of the binding. I don't think I have any close-up shots of it before, but this is rolling it to be vintage correct. And also to make it feel nice. Here we are. I'm marking out the cutout roughly with a Sharpie where I'm going to end up based on the measurements. I use calipers to measure from my original, and then just kind of draw it. And then when I'm shaping it, it actually comes out really nice and uniform. These are all rough cuts, roughing it in with coarse grit sandpapers. Then starting to smooth it out and fill it in. And as you can see, that shape is coming out really nice. Here's another shot of the binding, rolling that edge. Adding this bevel, this is one of the things that they don't do on the USA line that is part of the original vintage and the custom shops. Let me see if I can show that here on the original guitar. You can kind of see it here. There's that beveled edge all the way around, and here it's just round. So we're fixing that as well. Let me go back down to that. Another shot of the horn from a different angle, and the treble horn. This is just pictures of this is like my 62 Ebony block replica where the pointy horn is missing some meat, so it wasn't that possible to make the cut correct. It's my 61 Les Paul Custom. Here it is after the first pass of TV white with grain fill. Showing it's kind of hard, even in this pictures it's kind of hard to see, but here in some closer up pictures you can see the grain. This is in the first process. Kind of getting that grain fill there. Now this is after clear coats. This is after clear coats while doing the first pass of, I guess 800 or 1,000 or something. I can't remember exactly, but this is while I'm level sanding it and getting closer to a mirror finish. Closer and closer. It's coming out pretty nice. It came out pretty nice. This is all the Oxford vintage nitrocellulose. The other thing I did here was I machined down these bushings. He wanted more clearance on the treble side to go lower, and so but these are thick. They're probably another 1/16 or so more thick than this is, and this is after I turned them down, so I was able to get down to about 364 string height on the treble side for setup, and so that was the end result of that. So yeah, it came out pretty good. Here's some glamour pictures of it when it was finished, put back together. So I gotta say those bevels, which was important to Rich, look really nice, look really good, look vintage correct. The finish came out nice. It's kind of subtle. You can't tell it's a TV white until you get closer, but it definitely looks cool when you're playing it. You can see the grain pretty well right there. And you can see in the pictures of it raw that there wasn't that much end grain. It's pretty tight, so it didn't latch on to much. And I put a thin layer of Polaris white there, so looked pretty good. Looks better to you in person. The pictures bring it out a little bit. You can kind of see. I went for, it's a thin coat. It's a thin nitro paint, and it's the vintage formula, so it'll probably shrink even more. May check in shipping, but depending on how hot it gets. But I think it came out really nicely. Here's the headstock. There's some dust on there. It's the nicely rolled fingerboard, and I did use Monty's to darken up that fingerboard a bit. But yeah, the fingerboard's very comfortable now. It's got a nice roll to it, which you can see here. Super smooth transition. Some details of all the close-up, and then we're back to the mahogany pieces. But yeah, so it came out really nice. I'm happy. I'm proud of it. I think it came out really good, and looks pretty good, and I'm hope he's happy with it. I think it's really nice sounding. So stay tuned for the next section where I'm going to kind of show it in video and play it a little bit. All right. Okay, hey guys, so here is the final product. This is the SG61 faded, completely redone with TV white nitrocellulose. In the previous section, hopefully you saw some pictures of the guitar the owner wanted me to re-bevel this using my original vintage 61 as a template. And so went ahead and did that, matched this bevel pretty well. And actually, all the original early SG body Les Pauls differed slightly. They had variations of cut here, but they were all in a general range. So, but I copied mine and for that one, and it came out really nice. So I think the body bevels here and here, these horn cuts are very, very, very close to my original 61. And then the other thing we did was refinish in a gloss TV white nitro. So it looks really great. I think it turned out pretty well. I'm happy with it. The grain itself didn't pop as much. In fact, it might be hard to even see in this camera view the grain at all. Whereas some of it, like on the neck, is very prominent. Most of it on the back and stuff is not. You can see it with your eye easily, but to the camera, I don't think it's coming off very well. That said, it did come out great. A couple other things that were modified or done to increase the comfort of it were mainly this binding. So the original from the factory had a very sharp stepped edge. I wouldn't say sharp, not like it'll cut you, but it was a very noticeable 90-degree edge. And so I went ahead and rolled that really well, just like my vintage 61. And now it really feels, other than the thickness, this is a bit thicker than my vintage one. It feels just like it on the edges, on the shoulders. Very nice, very comfortable. I'm really happy with how that turned out. That turned out really great. The other thing I did was the bushings that hold the ABR1 studs into the body. On the treble side, it was basically maxed out, and it wouldn't go lower than like 5/64 for the high E string. So I machined the lip of that bushing thinner so we can get a better action on the E string there. And so now it sits at 3/64, which is factory spec. And I think there might be a tiny bit more room to go, but it won't go any lower. If we did ABR1 studs directly into wooden plugs, mahogany plugs, then we would have had a little bit more leeway. But just the way this neck angle is set, you don't have as much room as like on the custom shops. So anyway, those are the main things that we did. And I added pickup covers. I had these Mojoaxe pickup covers just spare sitting around, so I'm giving them to him to just make the look more cohesive. However, I think that this guitar would look really cool with either zebras or double whites. I think that would look probably look pretty good. Pretty much everything else is factory. The only other touch I did was this handle, the tremolo handle, had very sharp mold lines on it. And so I addressed those and made them much smoother so it doesn't like bite into your skin. But other than that, yeah, this is going to be a quick, simple tone. You know, these 61 rhythm and 61 lead pickups, I guess they're burst buckers. I'm not quite sure. I can't remember what the spec is. I know there's 61 lead and 61 rhythm. They're pretty good. The bridge is hot. It sounds really good with distortion, but the neck, the problem I have here is every guitar except for my 91 SG has PAFs or patent number PAFs in it and central labs. So I'm really spoiled on what, even in my Epiphone Flying V now no longer has the burst buckers. It has throwbacks in it. So every single one of my guitars to compare it to is just that bit much more articulate, crisp, clean. But these are great for drive tones. And if you didn't have a direct comparison, you wouldn't know any difference. It sounds fantastic. Now the 61, a little bit about this amp. The 61 Vibrolux has, I recently finally discovered one of the crackle and pop issues that was going on and fixed that. And now this amp is sounding fantastic. I'm not going to be doing any overdrive for this. It's kind of, we don't really need it, but just to kind of let you hear the tone. But this amp does not have reverb, so it's just as it is. my cat's playing with something. So it stays in tune really well. I'm not like I said, I'm not a great player, but I have fun. So anyway, to me it sounds great, and it plays good. But the real thing was just to show you guys the refinish. I'm not gonna bore anybody with my playing, but I thought, you know, everybody wants to see or at least hear it, no matter what, if it's played well or not. Anyway, to me it sounds good. It's a I think my favorite might be the middle position on this one. All right, so anyway, as you can see, despite the lousy playing, it's a really great sounding guitar. It stays in tune, the Maestro Vibro is awesome. Gibson is really kind of knocking it out of the park lately, and most people don't give two hoots about the body bevels and stuff, but certain people do, and if I can help make them a little bit better, like they used to be, that's a cool goal. And so doing a custom color refinish like this with the TV white is really cool. I think next time a TV gold would look awesome. Even TV yellow would be great. the TV part isn't that hard. It's just getting getting one with deep grain. And this could have been some of the existing pore fill from the original factory finish. Just was making it a little bit more difficult to get that, because when I did this, I did a very thin Polaris white over just the bare wood. So I would have plenty, and you can see there's plenty of grain popping out here and there, but for some reason in the back, big swath in the back here, there's plenty of grain, you can see it, but it's not deep and pronounced like you might see in some. And I've seen examples from Gibson like that too. So it could just be this particular wood. But in any case, yeah, I think this guitar came out really nicely, and I hope the owner is super happy with it. The other thing I did was I used Monty's Espresso wax to darken the fingerboard. So it was pretty light, and so it looks a lot better, feels better. I think the whole thing came out really good. So, oh, and just in case anybody's wondering what I used, this is all Oxford Guitar Supply, and the vintage formula nitrocellulose clear. All right. Well, thanks for checking it out. And if anybody needs their guitar refinished or rebeveled or whatever, let me know. I can't play them very well, but I can do a decent job finishing them. All right. So thanks for watching. Bye.